So, folks, there is this guy named Matt Walsh, and Matt Walsh has a bit of a bug up his butt when it comes to LGBTQ people. And, well, he decided that he wanted to do a segment on Johnathan Joss, the man who was a voice actor on King of the Hill and played a character on Parks and Rec. And, well, Matt Walsh is trying to paint the story in an interesting way. Let's take a look at his take on the narrative. And just as a reminder, I'm going to talk a little bit here up front about what happened. And in broad terms, you can go watch my last video. But to summarize, Johnathan Joss and his partner had been the targets of homophobic comments and harassment and threats. And their house was burned down in January of this year. You know, it's a real tragedy. One of their dogs died in the fire. And on the day he was killed, he and his partner were turning up to check mail in front of their burned out house to get the mail. And they found the skull of one of their dogs set up, and they began reacting poorly, reacting negatively, you know? And, well, let's check out, let's check out. Afterwards, a neighbor approached them, gunned down Johnathan Joss, who pushed down his partner, saving his life. And then the attacker fled. Police did catch him. And police, oddly enough, initially stated that this was not going to be considered a hate crime. Well, let's see what about this story Matt Walsh is claiming is falling apart exactly. Let's take a look.
Every single one of these hate crime hoaxes, going back 30 years, has been
Well, we're 2 seconds in, and we have already heard the phrase hate crime hoaxes. And, you know, we're 3 seconds in, and I have a sneaking suspicion we might also hear that the Matthew Shepard case is a hate crime hoax, because I just get that vibe from this man.
A fraud. This is just the latest example of a trend that we've all seen for decades now. In pretty much every case, when pathological liars feel trapped, when they realize they've lost all their credibility and their power, they don't suddenly decide to become honest people. Instead, they simply continue lying. I mean, think of Elizabeth Holmes after the collapse of Theranos, one of the most obvious clear-cut cases of fraud imaginable. From prison, Holmes has refused.
Yeah, basically, Anders, I see you throwing out Smollett. Yeah, they're basically trying to take the conservative media formula that they used around Jussie Smollett, and they're trying to apply it to hate crimes against LGBTQ people in order to say, oh, those aren't actually happening. No one, I mean, obviously, obviously their argument goes, you should hate gay people, but no, you would never hate gay people enough to beat them up and or kill them or fire them from their job. You would never do that. You should just hate them with a burning passion, but never act on it. But if you do, like, we're not going to be that mad about it. You know, it's like that's like the entire argument that this is making right here.
To take any responsibility, even though she orchestrated the entire fraud. She still claims she's a victim. There are about a million other examples, from Jussie Smollett to Bernie Madoff.
Yep.
The only way forward,
see,
in the liar's mind, is to come up with even bigger lies. And that's all they really know how to do. The more desperate they become, the more trapped they feel, the more obvious their frauds become as a result. At the moment, as a particularly depressing and financially insolvent Pride Month continues to trudge along, there is no greater illustration of this phenomenon than the so-called LGBT movement. These activists understand that they've been discredited. All of their narratives about alleged hate crimes from Matthew Shepard onward have collapsed.
Well, I called that shot. I do want to reiterate, I did not pre-watch this. I called that shot.
Under the slightest scrutiny. All of their claims about not having equal rights and...
But by the way, Matthew Shepard was targeted for being gay and left essentially crucified in barbed wire on the side of the road. But sure, bud.
just wanting to live their own lives without bothering anybody, have fallen apart as well. And that's why Pride Month ultimately is dying. And in response, rather than engage in any introspection, LGBT activists have predictably decided to push yet another lie. And this one, even by their standards, is truly staggering, not just because it's so grotesque and evil, but also because there are precisely zero sane people that would possibly be convinced by it. I'm talking about the decision by LGBT activists to push a bizarre and obviously false narrative about the recent death of a 59-year-old actor named Johnathan Joss, who was well known for voicing the role of John Redcorn in the King of the Hill show. He also appeared on Parks and Recreation. And according to activists, as well as several other media outlets, Joss was just a few days ago executed in front of his home by a homophobic bigot who had been tormenting him for a very long time in various ways, all leading up to his eventual execution in this homophobic hate crime.
Yes.
And as proof of these extraordinary claims, the activists point to the following statement, which was posted on Facebook by somebody identifying as Johnathan Joss's husband. And here's the relevant part of it. And as you listen to this, imagine you're a detective arriving at the scene of this homicide, trying to figure out who's telling the truth. And then imagine that this is what an alleged witness tells you. So I'm going to read it now. My husband, Johnathan Joss, and I were involved in a shooting while checking the mail at the site of our former home. The home was burned down after over 2 years of threats from people in the area who repeatedly told.
I'm unclear. I think I know what his line of argumentation is going to be, because Matt Walsh is kind of a piece of shit. But like so far you're correct, Matt. I just think that you're going to take a real fucking heel turn about a specific aspect of their relationship.
Told us that they would set it on fire. We reported these threats to law enforcement multiple times and nothing was done. Throughout that time, we were harassed regularly by individuals who made it clear that they did not accept our relationship. Much of the harassment was openly homophobic. When we returned to the site to check our mail, we discovered the skull of one of our dogs and its harness placed in clear view. This caused both of us severe emotional distress. We began yelling and crying in response to the pain of what we saw. While we were doing this, a man approached us. He started yelling violent homophobic slurs at us. He then raised a gun from his lap and fired. Johnathan and I had no weapons. We were not threatening anyone. We were grieving. We were standing by side. When the man fired, Johnathan pushed me out of the way. He saved my life. Johnathan is my husband. He was murdered by someone who could not stand the sight of two men loving each other. Close quote. That's the story. Now, having read that out loud, even if you know nothing about this case at all, you can immediately see the problem. And it's a pretty big one. None of it makes any sense.
How does none of that make any sense whatsoever? Like, I'm sorry, I don't know what part. Like, are you incapable of like imagining or, comprehending that people might be the targets of escalating violence over time? Like, what starts out as threats might turn into action and then escalate in its severity. Matt Walsh, you make arguments about that all the time, but when it comes to like an LGBTQ couple being targeted, suddenly that just doesn't make sense. I don't know, like that's not conspiratorial. That's a very common pattern of human behavior.
Incoherent. It's the kind of thing that somebody would write if they've lost their mind. If you live in reality, you know that gay men living in San Antonio are not going to be stalked for years by roving gangs of homophobes who taunt them with the skulls of their dead pets.
I don't know. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I know gay people who have been targeted with like stonings, like anti-LGBTQ activists showed up with buckets of their own stones to throw at them. I know like kids who have been kicked out of their homes or physically abused for being gay by their parents. Like I know that this kind of abuse happens. And like I know that there are people who, if someone is has the wrong color of skin and moves into their town, like their house will get like little notes or letters that threaten to like burn it down if like they stay around. You know, like that happens in the real world. To act like, oh, well, in the real world, no one would ever get harassed for being gay. No one would ever be harassed for being trans. Like, what kind of fantasy world does Matt Walsh live in? Like, he knows he's full of shit on this point.
And then light their home on fire and then shoot them. Okay, it's not the kind of thing that happens outside of the fevered imaginations of very delusional activists.
What do you mean it's not the kind of thing that happens? People have houses that burn down all the time. We have the crime of arson specifically for people who do that. Like, lighting someone's home on fire is probably one of the easiest go-to methods for people who don't like you to attack you, like historically speaking. And I'm sorry, I don't know a whole lot about San Antonio here, folks, but I don't think that people typically consider San Antonio like this progressive oasis. And I'm sure that even if they did, the people who live in the better parts of town for LGBTQ people would be able to tell you there are some parts of town where it's not great to be openly gay, because that's how every major city is. Data indicates that there were at least 61 anti-LGBTQ incidents in Texas during 2024. The Texas Observer and the Texas Department of Safety reported that in the first 6 months of 2024, 44 hate crimes were motivated by sexual orientation, out of a total of 287 hate crimes reported. Yeah.
It reads like a screenplay that was written by a demi-queer NYU student who's, also happens to be high on meth or something. At no point.
Matt, you've talked about like, I don't know, people like hunting you for sport because they figured out where you live. Like you've talked about that. Like you've talked about feeling threatened. You know that like people do that to other people. Like Matt Walsh, I'm sure, receives all kinds of threats all the time. But oddly enough, he seems incapable of actually imagining a world in which like people might carry out the threats towards other more vulnerable, less white and less rich people. Bizarre.
Should anyone have even pretended?
Like I'm sorry, if like, God forbid, Matt Walsh got like obliterated in some kind of hate crime, anti-white hate crime, like, would his spirit be like floating over the scene and being like, this is a fever dream written by someone like Ben Shapiro in his next book? No, it would just be bad. It would just be a bad thing to do. And I like the weird part about this is taking like an incident and saying, oh, it's so horribly written. It's a fucking murder, man. Yeah, murder's bad.
To take this statement seriously for any reason, it discredits itself. It makes no sense. We know
it actually does make sense. You just don't believe it because you don't want to think that would happen in the world, because you need to live in your little fantasy land.
That the man was killed, but there is no reason why we would take that statement at face value to explain how exactly he was killed and why. But a lot of people did present this statement, as incoherent as it clearly is, as a serious, believable account by a first-hand witness. Not just believable, but according to LGBT activists, it's absolutely unassailable. It's bulletproof evidence that this...
Well, I mean, generally people would take the word of someone who was standing right next to the victim at the time of the murder. Generally that would be considered some pretty strong evidence in the sequencing of events that occurred when no one else was around. Typically that would be the case there, Matt.
This is exactly what happened. And the media treated it that way too. In the UK, the Independent ran this headline, quote, King of the Hill actor Johnathan Joss was killed in a homophobic hate crime after years of threats, husband says. So they're
husband says. What is inaccurate about that, man?
Leading with the statement from this alleged husband without pushing back in any way. Outlets like Variety.
Why would they need to push back on the firsthand account of a witness? Like, again, you're like... oddly enough, I've never heard Matt Walsh make these arguments for any other crime ever being reported on in the media.
And MSNBC did the same thing. So did some very popular accounts on social media. The account Discussing Film, which has more than 2 million followers, wrote, quote, Johnathan Joss, the voice of John Redcord in King of the Hill, has sadly passed away at the age of 59 after being shot in a homophobic attack. So they're not even qualifying it as husband says. They're just saying it was a homophobic attack. The pop culture site Toon Hive posted this report, which has more.
Well, again, given that they had received numerous threats related to sexuality, I would imagine it would be safe to classify it as homophobic.
More than 14 million views. Quote, King of the Hill voice actor Johnathan Joss was murdered in a homophobic hate crime. His husband confirms. Here's another post with 5 million.
Do you guys understand how, like, brain cooked you have to be 6.5 minutes in this, and as a conservative just nodding along, being like, yeah, that is weird that a husband would have an account of his husband's murder? Like, do you understand how brain cooked you have to be?
Million views. Quote, they burned down his house, killed him and his husband's dog, showed them the dead dog's skulls, called them homophobic slurs, and then shot them. And there were thousands more posts like this all over the internet, from X to Reddit to Facebook to Instagram and everywhere else. Here's another post with hundreds of thousands of views. Quote, this is why the LGBTQ plus movement is necessary. This is why Pride Month is necessary. People shouldn't fear stepping outside to check their mail just for loving somebody of the same sex. If you think otherwise, go F yourself. The LGBT community is unanimous. This was a homophobic hate crime.
I mean, it sure seems like that, barring any other motivation or information that we are privy to. What it seems like on the surface, using the information that we have, is that it's a homophobic attack. Usually someone tells you they've been getting harassed for years for being gay. That is one of the conclusions. Now, if I'm presented with additional information, maybe I would reassess my own assessment. But barring any new info, kind of seems like that. But maybe Matt Walsh is about to drop some truth.
A gay man was executed in cold blood in broad daylight simply for being gay. But if you look a little more closely at this situation, as in if you spend like 5 seconds looking into it, you'll immediately find a few very fundamental problems with these claims. First of all, to begin with, here is a picture of Jonathan's alleged quote-unquote husband. And you can see it here. The quote-unquote husband is on the left. Now, admittedly, like Ketanji Brown Jackson, I'm no biologist.
You're right. You're not.
That looks a lot like a woman who is claiming to be a man.
I don't know, Matt. Are you a woman claiming to be a man? You both have beards, Matt. I don't know. I'm just wondering, Matt.
And indeed, this particular woman has a trans flag on her Facebook profile. In other words,
oh no, a trans man, perhaps?
There's no husband involved here. And as much as we all recognize that definitions and facts aren't really important to the LGBT.
I love that this guy's go-to upon hearing that Johnathan Joss was murdered is to say to the only remaining living person in that relationship that you're not really a husband, you know, to say to the grieving spouse, you're not a real husband. I don't know. Like, that's pretty disgusting to me on like a fundamental level. That's really hard to articulate.
LGBT movement. It seems like a big issue for their narrative that this was a homophobic attack.
It's not, because a trans man is a man, Matt. I genuinely, I don't know how. I guess are we gonna have to talk about like the scenario of like a trans woman in a bar? But you like I don't know, like are you gay for being attracted to a trans woman if you don't know that they're trans? No. You're not. You're attracted to them because they're a woman. I mean, I guess maybe you're gay if you're a woman and you're attracted to a trans woman at a bar because, you know, that's gay. But you guys know what I mean. Like, trans men are men. When men are attracted to men, they're gay, Matt. Trans women are women. When women are attracted to women, they're lesbians, Matt. Come on. Like, I'm sorry, Matt. Did you insist on like before you and your wife had sex, like not even had sex, before you and your wife went on a date, were you like, hang on, I need to check what your genitals are, otherwise I might be gay? Like, of course not. Of course you didn't, Matt. Like, and if you found out like 3 months in that your wife used to have, or your girlfriend at the time, sorry, used to have a dick and now has a vagina, you still wouldn't be gay. And if you found out she had a girl dick, you still also wouldn't be gay because it's attached to a girl.
And given that little detail, you might be wondering, well, who exactly is this woman? How credible is her story exactly? Well, she married Joss just a few months ago on Valentine's Day of this year. They hadn't known each other very long before that. And now this woman is claiming to know that for years, Joss has been tormented by neighbors who supposedly torched their home.
So your big thing here is that so far, just to break down what Matt Walsh's main points are, in his view, Johnathan Joss's husband lied about being a husband. And because they've only been married since Valentine's Day of this year, that somehow doesn't count. Also, like, I don't know how long ago prior to that they met. Like, maybe they've known each other for years. I don't know. But like, this is some like next level, like sicko shit from Matt Walsh, you know?
But the opposite is true. I mean, she's completely inverting reality. Here's a report from a local news station just a few months ago, shortly after the house fire. Quote, Joss said he left the house to go eat earlier on Thursday and thought he had turned everything off. He said he had been using a propane heater in the home for warmth. Mistakes happen, man, and it's my fault for, I guess, leaving something on, Joss said. Or if somebody came in and did something, who knows? Close quote. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a helpful bit of context that was strangely missing from the post that Joss's alleged quote unquote husband wrote on Facebook.
What are you talking about? Yeah. Why didn't this husband who watched the love of his life die in his arms, why didn't he write the more cohesive and inclusive breakdown of what happened when their house was burned down? Why, in his grief, why didn't he type out an entire essay detailing every moment of their life together?
She suggests that homophobes burned the house down. But
also, how absolutely disgusting to misgender like the trans husband of a man who was gunned down outside of his childhood home. Like, how absolutely disgusting.
Leaves out the fact that Joss admitted that he'd been using a propane heater for warmth and also admitted that he had probably made a mistake because he might have left it on.
I'm just throwing this out there, but based on the community he lived in, using a propane heater for warmth is not an uncommon thing. Now, maybe I'm wrong about that, but like it's not that uncommon of a thing to do.
And she also leaves out the fact that the local utility company had cut the power to the house and that it was slated for demolition. More on that later. In any event, essentially he's acknowledging that, yes, he burned his own house down. And that's not all the information that Joss's alleged husband left out. Watch.
This house was built by my dad in 1957 for my mom.
This was no role, but real-life heartbreak for actor Johnathan Joss when his family home on Dorsey Street burned down in January. On Sunday, neighbors say he was back on the now empty lot, checking on the Southside property when he got into a deadly confrontation. In the neighborhood, people say Joss made his presence known and not always in a good way.
We would see him down the street, yelling, ranting and raving, sometimes walking up and down the street.
Neighbors say Joss took the whole private property concept very seriously. Even after his house had burned down, they say he fiercely protected not only what was behind this fence, but well beyond it.
And just different things. He'll argue with different people.
Maybe somebody would drive by his home. He didn't like people driving in front of his home.
One neighbor says she saw similar behavior from Joss Sunday, although it's still unclear exactly how that led to him being shot.
So according to the neighbors, Joss would scream at passing cars. He would regularly harass innocent people in the community.
So what Matt Walsh is now doing is saying, actually, it's fine to kill someone for yelling on a street. Yeah, is someone being a dick to you? I guess it's fine to kill them in Matt Walsh's world. Like in Matt Walsh's world, right? It's incredibly insane that anyone would ever do a hate crime like burn down someone's house. That could never happen. But simultaneously in Matt Walsh's world, it's like someone who yells at people, well, they kind of had it coming.
He would act, in other words, a lot like an unstable drug addict with mental health issues. Right? That's how he would act. And that's just the beginning. Here's a report from the local station WFAA, which has more details from the day that Joss died. Quote, neighbors said that Joss was at the site Sunday night checking his mail, which he did regularly, when something went terribly wrong. A video shared by a neighbor who was present shows a man, who they identified as Joss, pacing up and down the street with a pitchfork and screaming. The neighbors say that it was common behavior over the years for Joss to scream while carrying weapons. And even though they say they didn't like it, several neighbors said they were surprised when a man who lives just 50 yards away responded to the situation with a gun around 6 p.m. on Sunday, close quote. Now, before I read the rest of this paragraph, it's worth repeating this line. The neighbors say it was common behavior over the years for Joss to scream while carrying weapons. And on the night he was killed, Joss was pacing up and down with a pitchfork and screaming.
Oh, wow. A pitchfork in Texas? No way. Like, I'm sorry. Okay. And the implication of that is what exactly? Was he going to attack people with a pitchfork? Like, I'm sorry. You're legally allowed to walk around with a pitchfork, man. It's crazy that Matt Walsh seems to give more of a shit about this than about like someone walking down the street with their gun. Like, it's so bizarre that like I'm baffled. Like, you are legally allowed to like walk around with like sticks or like farming implements. You're legally allowed to do that in most places. You're actually not allowed to just walk around with a gun, like being brandished in most situations. But like, yeah, I guess maybe if you have a conceal and carry, but like, I don't know, in that circumstance where you have a guy carrying around a pitchfork, say, and a guy carrying around a gun, most people should be, if they're worried about, you know, if you have to pick one or the other, you're worried about the guy with the gun.
Again, none of this made it into the husband's, quote unquote, account of events. Instead, we're supposed to believe that Joss was just minding his own business, checking the mail, when somebody shot him for no reason other than the fact that he's gay, even though he's in a relationship with a woman. Now, if that sounds a little hard to believe, it gets even worse.
Wait, so is Matt Walsh totally fine? Like, if you have like a buff bodybuilder trans man and like a buff bodybuilder like cis man, and they're together, Matt Walsh would still think that that's like that's a straight relationship? That's really bizarre to me. Like, can I pull this up here? From Men's Health. Scott Percy, the world's strongest trans man, is ready to defend his title. So, like, Matt Walsh is trying to tell me that, like, this man dated a cis man. He would think that that's a straight relationship. Like, I'm genuinely baffled. Like, I know ideologically he would say yes. Of course he does, but like, I'm sorry, I don't believe that in like actual lived reality, Matt Walsh would act like that.
Let's continue reading from the local news report. Quote, many neighbors said that Joss and Alvarez had a long history of trouble. They say both men had been showing weapons and trading threats for years. The feud took many forms. Weapons, everything, guns, shootings at all times of...
Yeah, I wonder what they were shouting at each other. Wonder if that's relevant at all.
Night, one neighbor said, adding the men didn't shoot at each other. No, just shooting rounds at their own property and stuff. You could just hear the multiple rounds just blowing off on both ends, and he would be yelling a lot, close quote. So there was just some casual gunfire on both sides of the dispute. It was a...
Yeah, Matt, it's Texas. You support the political party that makes that a standard in Texas.
Regular thing, apparently. And it was a conflict that Joss was obviously participating in actively. According to various news reports, police had been called to the Joss residence more than 60 times so far this year alone for a variety of reasons, from welfare checks to reports of shootings and fires. The callers reported that Joss had been carrying crossbows and pointing them at people, which led police to confiscate the weapon last summer. Also, it's emerged that neither Joss nor his alleged quote-unquote husband actually own the home.
God, what a disgusting man. To call like the bereaved spouse anything other than husband here, like it's disgusting. To like question his masculinity in this moment is wild. This would be like looking at Matt Walsh crying because his wife died and saying, "Look at him, he's a woman. Look at him showing such womanly behavior. Haha, disgusting."
Home that burned down. In fact, the property was slated for demolition before it mysteriously burned down Quoting from Fox San Antonio, quote, city officials saying that the home Joss and his quote-unquote husband had lived in was slated for demolition well before the fire in January of 2025. According records from the city of San Antonio's Dangerous Assessment Response Team indicated that neither Joss nor his husband owned the property. According to city officials, after several reports of theft and mental health concerns, the DART team got involved. After inspecting the property, the building was brought before the Building Standards Board, which ordered it demolished. DART then gave the couple a notice to vacate. The homeowner consented to the demolition of the home, and services were disconnected from the property in October of 2024. Officials say the home then sat on a list of homes to be demolished before a fire on January 23rd destroyed most of the structure, killing at least one dog in the blaze, close quote. The home was going to be demolished because of the state that it was in. And then after that, mysteriously, it burns down.
You know what? I think now's a good moment. You guys remember he played an interview? Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the interview that Matt Walsh played a small clip of.
What basically happened is that I've been dealing with the city of San Antonio for the last 6 months. I've had 4 neighbors basically say that my house is not worth living in. The house is in my name. Since then, they have changed no electricity, no gas. They took everything out. It's been so cold lately that my partner and I have been doing a fire inside to stay warm. Because for whatever reason, the city of San Antonio wants to tear my house down. 4 neighbors. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but your neighbors can say that your house is not worth living in. While I was out of town, it was vandalized. They took wires out. They knocked my pole down. So the city, no electricity, no gas. So in order to stay warm, we did the best we can. I was just told that one of my dogs died. Please, people of San Antonio, you guys need to know that we in Texas and San Antonio lead the number of homes to be demolished. If you have a neighbor that says your home's not worth living in, this neighbor over here has pulled a gun on me 3 different times.
That's a weird part of that interview to leave out, actually, of the Matt Walsh video.
AK-47 he pulled on me, and the court did nothing. The police did nothing. These kind of things happen when people have to do things to stay warm. It was my mistake. We checked over the fire, and we thought there was no fire burning, but evidently it was one that burned. My name's Johnathan. My name is Johnathan Joss. I do film and television. I'm the voice of John Redcorn and King of the Hill. Yes, I'm the voice of John Redcorn and King of the Hill. I have 8 million views with Sylvester Stallone. I'm not saying because of what I do is important, but people need to understand that people are being kicked out of their homes because neighbors don't care. Neighbors will turn their face or they'll say that something's wrong with your house. These people over here, they have kids that live there. They have kids that live in this house, and you can tell the electricity wire's hanging. For whatever reason, I'm coming down on them. It's okay. This is a house I grew up in. I'm more concerned about my dog that died. But you know what? The good Lord will protect us. I don't know which one is dead yet, man. They won't let me go in the house. But all I know is that if neighbors want you out of your house, they'll push you out of your house. There's times around here where they say, let it burn. They say negative things about my partner and I. I'm gay, man. And for some reason, the people don't want me here. That's fine. It was my mistake. But this is my house. My house. And I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay here, or I'm going to sell it to somebody who deserves to live here.
Keep in mind, this was his childhood home. That is why he is attached to this house in particular. And additionally, I don't know if you guys caught it, but he literally looked into the camera and said, "I'm gay, man." He talks about being harassed by the neighbors. Was this taken shortly before he died? This was taken earlier this year when his house burned down. And one of the things that is alleged is that, like, or is, I think alleged, is that either they left the flame on in the house, or the property was vandalized, which it was apparently when they came back, and someone either got into the house and tampered with the burner, or, you know, it was just straight up arson. So, like, that's kind of the allegation here, which is that he doesn't know what happened to cause the fire, at least at this point.
If you guys would like to buy this home, buy the property, please.
Yeah, this is January of this year.
This house was built by my dad in 1957 for my mom. This street has weird addresses. For example, 201 Dorsey. If you look at it, they're getting electricity from the other side. It's very interesting, this street. We don't have any sidewalks. We don't have any fire hydrants. The only good fire hydrant is at the end. So for Dorsey to be treated like this, it's not fair. It really isn't.
Did you accidentally?
Evidently, I did. It's my fault. You know, or if somebody came in and did something, who knows? My fence is knocked down over here, right where my partner's standing. We came home, that's been knocked down. People get in my house all the time. I turned everything off. But you know what? Who
People get in my house all the time. That is scary. And I do think there is a part of this where I don't know if he was doing particularly well. Like it seemed like he was really, really struggling. But I don't think that meaningfully changes like the facts of the case.
Who am I to say anything else? This neighbor again pulled an AK-47 on me, and the police said there was no witness. You can look at it; it's documented. My witness was standing right there. He was standing. We were in my truck together when he pulled the gun and pulled the trigger, and no one does anything.
Do you come and go from your house, or you're always?
I'm always here. We went to a hotel because it was so cold. For the last couple of nights, I wanted to come home and take care of my dogs. You know, we come every day. We feed the dogs. We leave. We feed the dogs. But mistakes happen, man. And it's my fault for I guess leaving something on.
Where was the fire? Where were you trying to keep warm at?
No, I kept warm in this far left room, you know, and we turned everything off. We went to Guerreros to have some breakfast. At 12 o'clock to have lunch at noon. We turned everything off, but you know, things happen, man. Things happen. But again,
what was it that you were burning that made it happen? Like if it did burn, like what was it?
Oh no, it was mesquite. I had mesquite and I had my propane tank to help, you know, light it up. We turned it off. But, you know, things can happen, man.
And that was inside the house?
Yes, sir. Because it's been really, really cold, man. And when you don't have electricity, when you don't have gas, but like I said, they pulled my gas out. They pulled my electricity out. Yes, I was paying for it. What happened was they pulled, the wire got pulled with a high wind, which pulled my loophole down. I called the city and asked them, could you please turn off the electricity so I could straighten my loophole? The guy told me no. So I straightened the loophole out myself. So what did they do? When they raided the house, they said that I worked on it. I was working on the house and working on electricity without a permit. Now, I can understand the electricity, but to do repairs on your house, you have to have a permit? Because I was doing repairs on the house.
What do you think, what was the reason of the fire?
Por pendejo. I left something on, man. That's the only thing I can do. I can't point fingers, you know? And why point fingers? I don't have a job. I don't have children. I'm missing one more dog. But all I know is that if anybody wants to buy a house, wants to buy some property, let me go. Le'eme needs to buy a home, I will sell it to them at a discount price. Because I want somebody on the street that can get respect back to this street. Not just for me, but for other neighbors. I'm one of the only people on the street that have been here since the beginning. You know, organizations like Le'eme, they buy things left and right. Everybody has a good part, everyone has a bad part. Like the old saying says, you got the good wolf and you got the bad wolf. What comes out? The wolf that you feed most. And right now, I'm going to feed the bad wolf because the city of San Antonio has treated me wrong and has treated my partner wrong. And now I get to go find out which one of my dogs is dead.
Where are you going to stay now? Do you have a place to stay?
No, I don't have a place to stay. I'm going to stay here today. I got to go see my dog, man. This is my home. I've already had neighbors tell me to leave. They're going to burn my house down, call me a fag, all these different things. But no one's going to say a damn thing because for whatever reason, everyone's sticking together. But you know what?
Hey, notice how he threw that slur in there? It's because he'd been getting targeted for being gay. Matt Walsh is just an evil motherfucker.
I have fans. I just need one fan out there to understand where I'm coming from. You know, I've posted videos on Instagram. I've posted videos on my TikTok. Videos that don't quite look right. Videos that look like they've been altered. I haven't altered them. Even the judge said that the video that these people provided when they had service said that I wrecked up fence, right? Even my attorney said those films look doctored. So they're going to try to throw that case out. But how do you say I'm knocking down a fence? Look at these fences. They're 8 feet on each side of me. You know, even if they saw something, who's going to see anything? You know, I can't see around the corner. I can't see around that corner. But for far as I know, I didn't know you could put an 8-foot fence. But thank you guys very much.
Whose car is that?
Like, also, like, he's pissed. It's a bad day. He's clearly not in a good way. And like, I really feel for him. But even if you're a conservative and you're watching something like this and you're saying, well, he was clearly mentally disturbed, that's not an excuse to kill him. It's not an excuse to like kill someone for like being neurodivergent or like having a bad day. I'm sorry, we all have bad days.
Yeah, that's my Impala. That was my 95 Impala Super Sport. Yeah, man. Things happen, brother. No, it's not gone now. It's still there. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff. For sure. All right, let's get back to Matt Walsh here. Oh, this is hateful.
Again, these are not facts that suggest that Joss and his quote-unquote husband were living the most stable life, or that they were being tormented by random, mysterious homophobes.
It's not actually, when you're being tormented by a homophobe, they're not random or mysterious. You know exactly who they are. I'm sorry. It's not, they're not doing it from a place of like embarrassment.
It looks a lot like they were very unstable people. You can't put a price on truth, but you can put a price on where you get it. Save 40% on new Daily Wire Plus gift memberships for...
I'm sorry. That was some real whiplash there.
Looks a lot like they were very unstable people. You can't put a price...
Talking about looking like very unstable people and then going into an ad for Daily Wire Plus memberships is very funny. Also, I just noticed, I guess Matt Walsh isn't too worried about the whole baby thing he has going on. Y'all remember he had like a plush baby that they were selling on like the Daily Wire store, and it was like Matt Walsh's head on a baby's body, and they kept making references to Sweet Baby Gang. Yeah, the weird diaper fetish merch that like has origins way back when he was like a radio host, and he was hosting Nazi diaper wrestling. That's a real thing, by the way. You can find the videos online of where he refereed grown men in diapers wrestling each other, and one of them has a swastika tattoo. That is sadly real, and I've watched it many times.
Price on truth, but you can put a price on where you get it. Save 40% on...
God, imagine thinking you're getting the truth from Daily Wire.
...that are just getting more unaffordable to keep up with. If that's the case, then Everyday Dose will be a lifesaver.
Oh my God, you have 2 ads in here? Jesus Christ. One right after the other. Wait, how much of this video? Was that like 2 minutes of ads? It's crazy.
Quote, I lived across this man for years. He started gunfights constantly, and he burnt his own house down trying to make a meth lab inside. He constantly threatened his surrounding neighbors and played victim when cops came. He used to throw bricks through my window and tore several of our mailboxes down, and no one on that block ever yelled homophobic slurs at him. It's a lie from his, quote, husband for sympathy, close quote.
You know, that's really interesting that Matt Walsh is willing to believe a random Facebook commenter over the person who witnessed the crime. That's so interesting.
Now, these multiple independent accounts are believable in part because of Joss's public behavior. In fact, just two days before his death, Joss crashed an event for the King of the Hill revival at the Paramount Theater in Austin, and he had to be escorted out by security. According to People magazine, quote, while the panel was in full swing, Joss stood up and approached the microphone set up for the Q&A portion of the event, which had not begun yet. The onlooker says that security guards came out at this time. The eyewitnesses says that audience members laughed nervously in the crowd, and that King of Hill co-creators Mike Judge and Greg Daniels didn't seem alarmed, while others appeared a bit worried or uncomfortable. So here's part of that footage of what took place. It was shot by an attendee using the name Brandon Brokenheart on Facebook. Watch.
But he said the mic wasn't going to be used, and I'm an actor. I see a mic, I use it. I see it wrong, I make it right. I take a breath, I want to breathe. And no offense, sir, I'm not a super fan. I said there's a hole in my fucking where my money should go. There's a hole. There's a hole. My house burned down 3 months ago. Because I'm gay.
So, like, you know, I'm noticing a through line here of this man repeatedly claiming to be gay and then Matt Walsh just not believing him.
I've had a couple loves in my life.
So he's obviously falling apart personally and professionally. He thought these people snubbed him by not inviting him onto the stage.
Which, yeah, he was one of the main recurring characters in King of the Hill, and arguably the funniest one.
Although you can kind of see why they didn't want him on stage. So he interrupts them while they're speaking. He shuts the whole event down. He veers between a joking demeanor and, being dead serious as he rants incoherently about 10 different topics. For example, he says that his house was burned down because he's gay, which is completely different from what he said a few weeks ago when he acknowledged that he may have caused the fire himself.
We just watched that whole interview where he repeatedly references being gay and also being called the F slur.
And meanwhile, everybody in the room is, nervously hoping that he's not going to become violent because he's acting like a schizophrenic. 2 days later, what do you know? The neighbors say that he was acting like a drug addict, screaming at random people while carrying a pitchfork. And to be clear,
yeah, and in Matt Walsh's world, that's a call for execution right there. Apparently,
I don't know exactly why he was shot. No one does at this point. We can't say whether Joss was threatening anyone or whether the shooting was justified or not at this point. But the balance of the evidence overwhelmingly suggests that he was not minding his own business and checking the mail when, out of nowhere, he was executed for being in a gay relationship, as the media and LGBT activists are claiming.
And what evidence is that? Like, what evidence do you have of the day that this happened that he provoked the attack, that anything? Like, you're like, well, he acts weird, and so he must have acted weird then, and you're just saying that based on what? Like, you have a firsthand account of the crime, and instead you're going, well, what if I imagine something different happened? Like, that's what he's doing here, and it's insane. This isn't like Sherlock Holmes detective work here. This is literal dog shit. This is, hey, we have this direct information about what happened, but what if we ignored that and made up our own narrative instead? You have to be so intellectually curious to buy into this shit.
There are about 1 million reasons why that claim is not convincing, starting with the fact that he wasn't even in a gay relationship, as well as the fact that he's repeatedly
He was married to a man, Matt.
Acted like a lunatic in public, and the fact that the source is a trans-identifying woman with every incentive to play the victim. And indeed, San Antonio police, who have access to all the available evidence, have come to the same conclusion.
Oh.
Here's what they wrote, quote,
Okay.
SAPD Homicide is currently investigating the murder of Mr. Johnathan Joss. Despite online claims of this being a hate crime, currently the investigation has found no evidence to indicate that Mr. Joss's murder was related to his sexual orientation.
Case closed.
Because reality doesn't matter to these people, this statement hasn't convinced LGBT activists to stop claiming that Johnathan Joss was executed for being gay, nor have any of the other facts.
Well, because most people tend to attribute more weight to the words of someone who personally witnessed the crime.
Just outlined. They still won't admit that Matthew Shepard was killed 30 years ago because of a meth deal gone bad.
He was targeted for being gay, Matt. Like, the order of operations, if anyone can look into this, the order of operations was because not the order of operations. The sequence of events started because he was gay. He was targeted for being gay. The killers used his homosexuality against him to entrap him, and then they left him crucified and barbed wire on the side of the road, Matt. Like, fuck you.
Not because he was gay. In fact, one of Shepard's killers was a man that he'd allegedly occasionally had sex with himself, meaning that one of the killers was gay.
What a disgusting man. Honestly, there are few people in this world I wonder about more than Matt Walsh when it comes to how does he get up in the morning and live? How does he live with himself? How does he actually I guess he just ignores reality. We did say at the beginning, he lives in his own special little sub-reality bubble.
Every single one of these hate crime hoaxes going back 30 years, and every single one of these hate crime claims going back 30 years has been a fraud. This is just the latest example of a trend that we've all seen for decades now. If anything's
I'm sorry, but the idea, I'm sorry. The idea that people in America don't get harassed or killed or beaten up for being gay and that's all just hoaxes. It's just a hoax if someone is murdered for being gay, is maybe one of the most disgusting lies I've ever heard Matt Walsh tell. That there's like some kind of trendy social like thing that the kids are doing these days where they fake hate crimes against themselves. Like, that's insane.
Changing, it's that the hoaxes are becoming far more incoherent and lazy and unconvincing. And you only see lies that are this transparent and desperate from people who are losing and who know they're losing. Desperate to find some justification for...
I'm sorry. You're alleging that like the LGBTQ movement of the 90s fabricated, and they got what out of that exactly, Matt? Like, it's very bullshit conspiratorializing. But I guess that what they're trying to do at the Daily Wire these days is throw different conspiracies out there to try and like bait their audience and figure out which one is the most popular.
Pride Month and the LGBT movement in general, these pathological liars are deliberately attempting to exploit the very predictable and tragic death of an unstable guy, all under the...
Wait, murder is very predictable? Wait, it was very Matt, did you know this man was going to kill Johnathan Joss? Matthew Walsh, are you a precog? You're not. Fuck you.
Guise of compassion and social justice. It's a fraud. And that's no surprise because their entire movement is a fraud.
Man, I hope that much like Alex Jones, a bunch of people who've been slandered and had misinfo spread about them sue Matt Walsh out of existence.
And the more they pretend otherwise, the more they pretend to care about Johnathan Joss, and the more they pretend to be terrified of phantom homophobic gangs that randomly stalk and torment gay men in San Antonio, the more obvious it is how truly powerless and pathetic these people have become. If you'd like to see what else
Yeah, well, you know, as powerless and pathetic as I might be, at least I never wrote an op-ed defending a man who sexually assaulted his siblings and was arrested with one of the largest child pornography like collections to date. You know, at least I didn't publicly defend that man by saying that if my child sexually abused another one of my children, I wouldn't report it to the police. At least I didn't say in an op-ed that I would cover up horrible sex crimes against my own children. Matt, unlike you, in that famous Blaze article that people can still look up online. And yes, I am going to bring that up almost every single time Matt Walsh is brought up, because he's disgusting, you know? Now, let's, because Matt Walsh didn't show this part, let's show this. This was uploaded several days ago by KSAT channel 12, and it shows Johnathan Joss outside pacing, and this is minutes before the shooting took place. We're not going to watch the entire thing because it's long, but I think you guys will get the idea.
I'm walking down the street, man. I can't get you, man. Walking, man. What? You don't speak? No español.
Quiero que lo grabes.
Say what you want. Walking down the street. No putting stuff up here. But no. Woo! You guys are taping me for what? I'm walking down the street. I'm rehearsing.
Okay.
I make movies, man. I'm rehearsing the scene. Let's go. Die.
Y se oye todo lo que está diciendo.
You still look like that? I'm just walking down the street. You're taping me.
¿O no me escuchan?
Feel like that, man. What's it feel like?
Tengo que poder más cerca de la
Think you're
cámara.
going to be going somewhere else. What's it feel like, bro? Debbie, damn it. How you feel? Does that guarantee people like when you go to bed, you don't know when you're going to wake up? You pull a gun on somebody, that's reason for deportation, man. The cops dropped the case because they had no witnesses, right? But I had a witness. But I'm not going to policía. So we're going to reopen the case. And look, I don't have to do it just like the cops put you on me. The cops put you. But this is the case. Mine wasn't a felony. Yours would be a felony. Think about it. You read that paper when you sign it. Reason for deportation. I was looking at the street because I put wires. Ain't doing nothing wrong, sir. I'm the police. You guys called the cops when I'm not here. I can yell, I can scream, I can pray. Whatever I want. And they don't mean I'm crazy. They don't mean I'm like me, I got the hand of God.
Yeah, I mean, someone who's been allegedly harassed for years, and like this is minutes before his murder. I believe at the beginning of the video it states minutes. Yeah, minutes before the shooting. So like I mean, I see someone who is mentally unwell. I see someone who apparently, according to testimony from the husband, just found the skull and harness of one of his dead dogs, placed deliberately for him to see. I see someone who is like beside himself, and like he's also not breaking the law. He's in the street. Is he doing something very abnormal? Absolutely. Is he yelling at people? Yes. But that's also not a crime. You know, you can just like go into your house. You can just not engage with that. He used to record himself while in his car. Does that mean he's unhoused and maybe could be because of drug addictions? I don't know. I'm just asking questions. I mean, yeah. I mean, all of that is possible. Still doesn't change that what he's doing in this particular moment is actually not illegal. Walking around, walking down the street. Maybe there's like a city ordinance against walking around with a pitchfork. Like I know in some places in Minnesota, you can only have a knife that's so big. Maybe, but like other than that, like being kind of belligerent and yelling at people is not, I mean, it's unpleasant, but I don't think it's technically a crime. No, he's supposed to be perfect at all times. Any and all perpetrators have free reign to do it. Otherwise, perpetrators will have free reign to do what they want. Yeah, I guess. But yeah, so it's him. You get the idea. It's him walking around, yelling, being loud. Yeah. Also, nothing about what Matt Walsh talked about was related to Johnathan Joss being Indigenous, and it's just kind of like that's a pretty big element when it comes to like law enforcement in, you know, Texas. Indigenous people often get shafted when it comes to any kind of government response because, you know, the genocide and the power dynamic that currently exists. It's disgusting, but like there's definitely a level of like discrimination, I think, going on here because of his Indigenous identity. Yeah, I mean, like if you ever want to look more into that, like take a look at like some of the missing Indigenous women stats. It's insane. We have one last piece of this puzzle, which is that Matt Walsh ended with saying, "Well, it's definitely not a hate crime because, haha, the San Antonio police said it's not a hate crime." One final update.
Everybody ready? So let me start out by saying that we issued a statement. I believe it was the day after Johnathan Joss's murder. That was way premature. Shouldn't have done it. It was way too soon before we had any real information, and I will own that and simply say again that we shouldn't have done that. It was way too early in the process for any statement of that nature to be issued.
Looks like Matt Walsh got something incredibly wrong.
Whoopsie.
What a weird coincidence.
Having said that, I want to update you on the ongoing investigation as far as I can talk about it. I'm not going to go over the details. I think everybody's already aware of them.
I am going to speed this up, however, because he talks really slow.
The report's been released. We understand that many in the LGBTQ plus community are feeling anxious and concerned. A lot of it has to do with that premature statement that we released, and again, I own that. Shouldn't have done it. The loss of Johnathan Joss was tragic and most heavily felt by the LGBTQ plus community. There's also concern about the circumstances surrounding that death and the history in the neighborhood leading up to that. One of the most common questions that we've received is why this case isn't being charged as a hate crime at this point. Why didn't SAPD charge him with a murder and a hate crime? In Texas, hate crimes are not separate charges. Instead, they are addressed through sentencing enhancements. So, for example, if someone's arrested for a Class B misdemeanor and a hate crime designation attaches to that charge, then that Class B misdemeanor is elevated to a Class A misdemeanor.
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
if a second-degree felony is eventually designated as a hate crime, then that would bump up to a first-degree felony. So that's how that works. We don't charge with hate crimes. We gather the facts, and we give those facts to the district attorney's office, and then that hate crime designation is determined at sentencing.
That is really weird. I mean, I did not know that, and that is a really, really interesting fact. Yeah, that does sound kind of fucked up. Is the video muted? No, the video has like left audio only. I don't know why, but hopefully my wonderful editor can handle that in the segment on the stream. It's mono, not for me.
But we don't charge hate crime. Our homicide detectives are continuing to pursue every lead in this case to ensure that we understand the full picture of what led up to the senseless murder of Mr. Joss. We're committed to delivering a thorough and complete investigation to file with the district attorney's office for prosecution.
So literally calling it not a hate crime on Matt Walsh's part is also just incorrect, but also on my part, similarly incorrect. You know, I was anticipating nefarious motives on the San Antonio Police Department, you know, because police. But, you know, I guess it's just actually because of Texas law being...
We're also working closely with the San Antonio Fire Department arson investigators to better understand the fire connected in this case. That was back in January.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware that they were reopening the fire case. That's actually really interesting.
That part of the investigation is still active, and we'll share more once we have additional information that we can verify.
Okay.
We've also seen concerns about the volume of calls to Mr. Joss's residence. There were approximately 70 calls over the past 2 years involving various neighborhood-type disturbances. Sometimes he was the caller. Other times the neighbors were calling on him. Our SAFE unit and our mental health units had extensive engagements with Mr. Joss, making repeated efforts to mediate conflicts and connect him with services that he may have needed. At this time, the investigation remains active, and we need to be cautious about not releasing too much information that could negatively affect the upcoming legal process. And finally, to our LGBTQ plus community, as we observe Pride Month, please know that your safety and trust matter deeply to us. Please join us tonight for a community forum that we are hosting at With Pride San Antonio at 6 p.m. at the Woodlawn Point Center at 702 Donaldson to listen and to connect with your SAPD Police Department. That's all I have. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them, but I'm not going to get into the details, any of the details of the ongoing investigations. I met with the lead investigator and the homicide captain yesterday, and I'm satisfied as to the progress that they're making in this investigation right now.
Is there any evidence that Joss's sexuality played a role in his murder?
I just said that we are investigating that. So, but pardon?
I just have to ask.
Okay, I just said that is part of the investigation, and whatever we find out in that regard, we will turn that information over as part of the package to the district attorney's office. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, guys, he's the representative of the police department. He's going to try and present the police department in the best light he can.
Do you think the suspect in this murder is involved with the fire in January?
Say again?
Do you have any reason to believe that the suspect in this murder was involved in that fire from January?
I'm not going to speculate on that. Again, it's still under investigation. We spoke with arson investigators who are still actively investigating that case. Okay? All right, thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
That's interesting. Very interesting. So it's not so much that it's being charged as a hate crime, because they can't charge that. It needs to be classified as a hate crime upon sentencing. That makes sense to me, I guess, in a weird way. Like, that law and sequence of events doesn't seem to make sense, but is what it is. That being said, I am interested to see what they find in their investigation. We'll be keeping a close eye on it. I also don't use OBS, Quirky Nico. You don't charge murder unless it's not self-defense, but a motivated killing. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything we have learned since the initial incident has at all diminished the possibility that this could have been a hate crime. I don't think any of it diminishes the reliability of the husband's account of what happened. I don't think any of it diminishes Johnathan Joss's heroism in saving his husband's life with his dying action. I don't think any of it diminishes any of that. If anything, it makes the story more tragic to know that this is a man who had been struggling for years. And whether that was drugs or just bad mental health or poverty or what have you, like, it doesn't change the fact that Johnathan Joss died a hero. And I mean, I guess I have nothing else to say except fuck Matt Walsh for the amount of disrespect, for the amount of pure hatred being spewed on, like, not just Johnathan Joss, not just Johnathan Joss's husband, but like on every single LGBTQ people, by basically saying all of the blood shed by queer people over the past 30 years, all the sweat, all the tears, it's all just a big hoax. It's all just a trick. We're tricking the feeble-minded cis people into enjoying drag brunch and, you know, being okay with their kids getting married to boys, you know, when they're a boy. Like, that's, I don't know, like, that's not a trick. I'm sorry, that's just people recognizing what it takes to be a good person. That's it, full stop. And I didn't think it was possible to think less of Matt Walsh than I have up to this point, but I somehow, like, we went below bedrock. Now we're just free falling into the void. You know, we're just, the bottom is limitless. It's disgusting. So with that, rest in peace, Johnathan Joss, and may you receive the justice that is due.
Riverboat Jack is going to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube is where she streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, plenty more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.